Yeah, a few weeks ago we did discuss the votes that took place on January 26th, 2024, on the provisional measures that were requested by the government of South Africa to bring an immediate measure of relief against the Zionist onslaught that's killing tens of thousands of innocent people, particularly women and children, in the Gaza Strip. And the provisional measures were based on the charges of genocide based on the 1948 Genocide Convention that allows any state that's a signatory to the convention to bring these charges against any other state that's a signatory if they aren't honoring the convention. Now, the provisional measures didn't require the justices at the International Court of Justice to rule up or down on the actual meat of the charges, the various charges that the South African government presented against the Zionist state. The provisional measures simply had to meet a lower standard to say, is the request plausible? Are the charges that we are making plausible? It doesn't mean that you have to prove them to the high level of intent that the court has to meet in order to declare genocide. It's the Genocide Convention is very interesting because you can kill 100,000 or 1,000,000 people. Someone could kill a government could kill 100,000 or 1,000,000 people and not necessarily be charged with genocide, even though the group of people they kill may be a distinct ethnic group, for example, or a distinct nationality, unless you can prove that they intended to do it. It's, to me, it's legalese. The people are still dead, but you can't necessarily charge them with that. Now, there's some other things they could be charged with, which are not under the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice. For example, they could be charged with war crimes. That has to take place in the International Criminal Court. So that was the bar. It was a much lower bar that South Africa had to meet. And the judges who agreed on the 6 provisional measures, most often by a vote of 15-2, in this one instance 16-1, they agreed that South Africa had met the standard of plausibility, meaning that it at least has the appearance of truth, that is reasonable, that what they are claiming is reasonable, is seemingly worthy of acceptance or approval. So we'd have to take a lot of time, and we'd need some legal minds to go through some of the entire dissenting opinion of Julia Sebutinde, the Ugandan judge who is now actually the vice president. She voted against all these measures, and a week later she got voted to be the vice president of the International Court of Justice. We just wanted to look at this particular one instance because this was the most extreme. This vote was 16-1. Even the Zionist judge that had a temporary position on the court voted in favor of this particular measure. Okay, and this measure says the state of Israel shall take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to address the adverse conditions of life faced by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. And as you can see, there were 16 judges that voted for this, and there was one that voted against it. That was Judge Sebutinde. So we have been, since this ruling came down on January 26th, we knew that the state of the Zionist state, the state of Israel, wasn't going to abide by the ruling of the court, because the court actually doesn't have any authority to enforce its rulings. It's more about, in my opinion, shaping world opinion, applying whatever pressure they can in terms of in the court of public opinion to actually get other states to perhaps take action against the person who has been ruled against and doesn't abide by it. So even if Sebutinde had voted for this, the Zionists weren't going to abide by it. But the fact that she voted against it in light of all of the evidence that she had in front of her between October the 8th and January 26th, when October the 8th, 2023 and January 26th, 2024, when she issued her dissenting opinion. Since that time, more evidence has become available to show that Israel is continuing to violate, this particular order. And so we came across this recent video of this incredibly horrible situation that the children of Gaza are in.
Tiny limbs, bones protruding. The constant sound of crying from children now facing starvation in Gaza. In this overrun hospital ward, anxious mothers watch on as doctors provide whatever care they still can. But for some, there is nothing more to be done. 3-year-old Mila, who had been suffering from acute malnutrition, now another victim of this merciless war. She was healthy. There was nothing wrong with her before, Mila's mother says. Then suddenly, everything dropped. She wasn't eating anything. We had no milk, no eggs, nothing. She used to eat eggs every day before the war, but now we have nothing. Across Gaza, too many are feeling the pain of this deepening hunger crisis. Small children, emaciated and malnourished. These were little Yazan's final moments, his tiny fingers gripped in his mother's hand. He, like Mila, would not make it. Others are still just barely holding on, but there is no telling how long they will survive. Standing beside Mila's body, Dr. Ahmed Salem says many children at this hospital are now dying. Tuesday, UN experts accused Israel of intentionally starving the Palestinian people in Gaza, noting that the Israeli military is now targeting both civilians seeking aid and humanitarian convoys. Israel has denied targeting civilians and says that there is, quote, no limit to the amount of humanitarian aid for civilians in Gaza. But the reality on the ground paints a very different picture. There is no food, no water, no flour, cooking oil or anything, this woman says. Death is better than this. According to a senior UN official, at least a quarter of Gaza's population is now said to be just one step away from famine. With aid agencies facing overwhelming obstacles in getting the bare minimum of supplies into Gaza. And as Israel's ground offensive threatens to push further into the Strip's densely populated south, time is quickly running out.
So there's a video that shows children in Gaza dying from malnutrition because they simply don't have enough food to eat. And despite you see the reports there from the UN officials who are on the ground in Gaza. You saw the trucks lined up at the border between Egypt, the Sinai, and the Gaza Strip. Those trucks are blocked by the Israel Defense Forces. They will not allow the trucks with humanitarian aid to come in, except for a few on occasions. And even in the places where the army isn't present, you have these Zionist settlers who are out there and said that their intention is to deny any food, to the people of Gaza. And we see the children dying. Now, in her dissenting opinion, Judge Sebutinde wrote, the war was not started by Israel, but by Hamas, who attacked Israel on 7 October 2023, thereby sparking off the military operation in Israel's defense and in a bid to rescue its hostages. I must agree that any genocidal intent alleged by the applicant, that's South Africa, is neglected by one, Israel's restricted and targeted attacks of legitimate military targets in Gaza. So she's saying that Israel is only bombing legitimate military targets. Now we're going to show a chart to show you what these legitimate military targets are, according to Sebutinde. It's mitigation of civilian harm by warning them through leaflets, radio messages, telephone calls of impending attacks. Now, when they first attacked the northern part of Gaza, Gaza City, they told people to flee to the south. They dropped leaflets or whatever and say, flee to the south. They attacked the people as they were fleeing to the south, and now about over 1 million of those people are located in southern Gaza around the city of Rafah, and they are planning to attack Rafah. So she said, that there's a mitigation of civilian harm by warning them through leaflets, okay? And of course, we saw just last week where people were lined up to get some food, and the Israel Defense Forces fired into a crowd of people lining up to get food and killed over 100 people lining up to get food, and they claimed that they were a threat to them. People just trying to get their hands. They call it the flour massacre. Just trying to get a few buckets of flour to make some bread, and they killed them. And finally, she said, and this is one of the most egregious things that she said. It's facilitation of humanitarian assistance. Now the whole world, everybody with eyes can see, through the reporters on the ground, the UN reporters and others, that the Zionist state is actually denying humanitarian assistance. And she's saying they're facilitating it. A careful examination of Israel's war policy and the full statements of responsible government officials further demonstrates the absence of genocidal intent. Now, her whole argument for voting against everything was based on her concept of genocidal intent, which did not have to be proven at this stage of the process. At the provisional stage of the process, that did not have to be proven. It only had to be plausible, reasonable, the appearance of truth. That's all that was required. And that's why you had these rulings. But this 16-1 ruling where she's saying that they were facilitating humanitarian assistance is detached from reality. I don't care what kind of, you could say, about her legal expertise and, how brilliant a lawyer and judge or whatever. You can be all of that and still be detached from reality. The reality on the ground flies in the face of what she wrote in this particular opinion. And then, and so the other question is that South Africa presented all of these statements by Benjamin Netanyahu and all of these other Israeli government officials, including members of the war cabinet. And she said that didn't prove intent. So play the clip from the defense minister, Gallant, Brother Amos.
Before we go into Gallant, I just want to say, I don't think she wrote this at all. I think that Benjamin Netanyahu typed this up and told her this is what you're going to present. Because if you look at 1, 2, and 3, these are all very biased towards Israel. And it sounds like a format, a script that they gave her to go by. But here's the clip.
We are putting a complete siege on Gaza. No electricity, no food, no water, no gas. It's all closed. We're fighting animals and are acting accordingly.
Okay, now that was a statement that was made by the Israel defense minister Gallant right after the events of October the 7th, and he clearly explains what is going to happen. He clearly explains what the government was going to do in terms of this is not fighting a war. This is actually attacking innocent people by cutting off food, water, all of these kinds of things. And it may be debatable as to whether, you would classify that under, some people would say it's not classified under the quote unquote guidelines of genocide, even though it violates international humanitarian law. But this is a clear evidence of intent that they stated themselves. Now they've toned down these remarks. There's still some remarks made by some of the more extremist Zionists, but Netanyahu had these guys kind of toned down their remarks, but they have numerous remarks that they've already made that actually prove intent. Now, where is the proof? Put up the chart there from Euromed. Okay, so now there's an organization, the Euromed Human Rights Agency, that is calculating data along with the Gaza Health Ministries, which is an Hamas organization. And in my opinion, all of these counts, they are undercounting everything from the deaths to everything else. But so this was the data that they published on the 23rd of February, and it shows over 38,000 deaths, 71,000, injured. It shows on the chart the number of, for example, 99,000, homes destroyed, other types of infrastructure, schools, hospitals, mosques. And this is what Sebutinde is saying are legitimate military targets. Now, what the Zionists are saying is that Hamas is using these facilities. They've built tunnels up under them or whatever. Okay, and so if you know they're in the tunnels, go in the tunnels and get them. You bombing hospitals. Actually, what you're doing is actually making your task more difficult, but you really don't have no intention of going in there and fighting these people face to face. Not really. Not really. But I mean, this chart actually just destroys her argument regarding what is happening to the innocent civilians, of Gaza. So we'll probably review some of her other opinions in the dissenting opinion that she released. But we wanted to point this one out because it was just so crystal clear that this judge is detached from reality. I don't care what kind of legal grounds she's using, she's detached from reality. One of the other things she said was that she said that the situation between Israel and the Palestinians is not a legal issue. It's a political issue that needs to be resolved by resolutions passed by the UN Security Council. But we see that since October the 7th, every time the Security Council votes 13-2 or 14-1 or whatever they may vote on measures that call for a ceasefire, the United States raises its bloody hand and vetoes it. So once again, it's detached from reality. And this chart just shows some of the neo-colonial politicians, running dog lackeys of the American empire, and how they seem to strategically use Black people at the United Nations to cast their votes. And the two votes at the bottom are people who are members of the the Biden administration. Of course, you see Condoleezza Rice, Susan Rice, Colin Powell, all of these representatives of the American empire, and they use them to put a black face on American imperialism. But how do you get UN resolutions to bring about a ceasefire or bring about an end to hostilities when every time a resolution is voted on by a majority of the council, the United States vetoes it? So that's just another example of her reasoning being detached from the reality that's on the ground, or the reality that's in the world. And actually, it's up to the rest of the world to implement, to enforce these measures, right, via various means, such as sanctions, for example. So just wanted to point that out, Brother Amos. We wanted to come back and take a look at this because some people did. We received some criticism from some people who said that, you know, her ruling was legal, you know, based on the Genocide Convention, and we just wanted to contrast the ruling with what is actually happening. So,
well, in one period, slavery was legal.
it certainly was.
You know, following a law doesn't necessarily mean that it's right.
Exactly.
Which means that you have people in power who decided what the law was going to be. And we said on that program, at least I said, that I believe that she took a bribe. Well, now we see a week later, you take a position and now you become the vice president. So obviously she had something to gain from the position that she took, whether that was monetary or political. She had something to gain, and she did gain something after taking that position and deciding to vote against the resolution. You know, we didn't even mention on, you know, we didn't even mention on a previous program that in a similar vote on the Ukraine and the United States war, I mean, the Ukraine and I said it correctly, Ukraine and the United States war against Russia.
Exactly.
She voted, you know, that against Russia. So you vote against Russia for going to war with Ukraine, but you vote in favor of Israel killing innocent civilians, and Israel has killed far more innocent civilians than Russia has in a shorter time span.
Exactly. Yeah, she voted for a ceasefire. Ukraine asked for some provisional measures, same as South Africa did, and she voted for 3 provisional measures for Ukraine against Russia. One of the provisional measures was calling for a ceasefire, and in the face of that vote, and all of the reasoning she had for voting for Ukraine, then she votes against a similar request by South Africa. It does, you know, the appearance. We have we don't have any evidence, but there is an appearance of something not being clean in the wash. But at the same time, it's possible that that's just her, how distorted her mentality is. I mean, I don't know in terms of moral conscience here. What I'm talking about is moral conscience, right? In terms of moral conscience, it just, you know, it's totally detached from reality. It doesn't make any legal sense. I mean, particularly at this stage of the proceedings, where the bar that was required to be met was much lower than the high standard of intent. Intent is a crazy thing. I mean, in terms of the way laws are constructed, right? I mean, a police officer guns down 12-year-old Tamir Rice. They don't file civil rights charges against him because they said they couldn't prove that he intended to kill him. The child is dead.
Right.
So they you know, maybe it's because the killers themselves want to have a high bar so that they don't get charged. But in terms of moral conscience, it's, you know, her ruling is just despicable in my opinion. Her reasoning is totally illogical. So anyway, we'll continue to cover this story as other events unfold.